All right, I'm live. This is my first time doing a live here on YouTube. I've done lives before on Instagram and Facebook, but just wanted to try this one out just to get an idea of what this is like. And if I like it, there'll be more live YouTube videos to come. All right, but what are we going to talk about in this short time while I do this test for this live? Let's talk about what everyone's talking about today, and that's yesterday's college football national championship game. Well, I was one of those guys who was very anxious to see what was going to happen in terms of the schematics between Clemson and LSU. In particular, Clemson's defense going up against LSU's offense. And in the early going, I got what I was hoping for, and that was to see someone do something to slow down this LSU's offense. Clemson came out in a ball of fire defensively, seemed to have a very good game plan, but as in what we saw all year long with LSU, they were quick to make adjustments. Sometimes it just didn't seem fair, the offensive minds of LSU going up against some of the defensive coordinators. And again, that's a lot of what we saw yesterday, as in within, let's say, 3 or 4 possessions, LSU was able to figure out what they needed to do offensively and to get things flowing. It really started with the big pass play to Jamar Chase against A.J. Terrell, who is unfortunately who everyone is talking about today. That was number 8 cornerback for Clemson, who had a bit of a rough night. He was very good in the first 2 or 3 series, but after giving up that big touchdown pass, it seemed to be all downhill from there. And this is pretty much what LSU seemed to do all year, fellas. If you're A.J. Terrell or you're a Clemson fan or you're even a defensive back who, happened to sit there and watch this game last night, there's a lesson to be learned there. It's something that's told to defensive backs quite a lot, and that is, hey, line up and get ready for the next play. Let's not dwell on the things that were negative. Again, a rough night for A.J. Terrell. There are people today now, fans out there on Twitter and other social media outlets that are, trying to sum up the guy's entire career based on one game. Can't do that, folks. Kid's been a solid defensive back for Clemson for the entire time that he's been there. He had a rough night against an offense that has given everyone rough nights throughout this season. You got to take your hats off, though, to LSU, Joe Burrow, Ed Orgeron, and those guys. It wasn't too long ago, folks, that LSU had a prehistoric offense that really was not very good, for lack of a better term. And so kudos to them to making the necessary changes, providing an offensive attack that the quarterback that they had could run at a very, very high level. And I don't think I've ever seen a prospect rise as fast as Joe Burrow has been able to do. He's gone from maybe a mid-round pick and not someone that anyone was talking about being drafted high as a quarterback to being the number 1 guy. And I would say, quite honestly, if it was Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow coming out right now, I'd have to go with Joe Burrow as the number 1 overall pick if it was my team. If I'm the Cincinnati Bengals, I'm taking Joe Burrow. Why am I saying that? Because he displays a lot of the characteristics that I've seen in my years of watching the NFL that translate into a lot of success at the next level. Number 1 is the decision-making. Outstanding with the decision-making. And it just seemed to get better as the year wore on. Last night, knowing when to pull the ball down and run, knowing when to hold the ball and sit there in the pocket and look for opportunities down the field, and then, of course, going through his reads and making the right throws. The other thing is the accuracy. Those are the 2 number 1 things for me when I'm looking at a quarterback and trying to project his level of success at the professional level. That's decision-making and then accuracy. And then all that other stuff that people like to fall in love with, which is arm talent, how far and hard he can throw the ball. There are going to be very few times, especially in the way offenses are run now in the National Football League, where you're required to throw a ball 60, 70 yards downfield. Those are usually Hail Marys and things like that, and those are not common plays. The everyday, every down, every series plays that you need to make, which are the short and intermediate throws. He seems to excel at that, and he does, as A.J. Terrell was able to find out last night, and Clemson's defensive backs were able to find out, he throws a very good deep ball. So if they were both coming out right now, which they're not, Trevor Lawrence has another year, and who knows, maybe he looks like Joe Burrow next year. But if they were both coming out right now, Joe Burrow would be my guy that I would take #1 overall if I were running the Cincinnati Bengals. But that's neither here nor there. I'm not a general manager for the Cincinnati Bengals or any other team. But again, hats off to LSU and to Ed Ogeron and the entire Bayou. Tigers are the national champs, so congratulations to them on that. Another thing I wanted to touch on was what's happening in Major League Baseball. The Houston Astros manager yesterday received a 1-year suspension. And then he received a pink slip from his team. Wonder why that went down like that. Hey, listen, A.J. Hinch brought the team a World Series last year, or the season before, 2018 season. And then the 2019 season, he has them right back in the World Series again. But it just goes to show how quickly things can change. And listen, it's funny. I happen to be following the guy that broke this thing on Twitter. This goes by the name of John Boy. He's he's a folk hero now, tremendous amount of followers. Apparently, he was very popular before all this happened, but he was a guy I just ended up following at the beginning of this season. Don't remember quite why I started following, but nevertheless, following this guy, and then one day he just starts talking about the Astros cheating, and I'm like, okay, yeah, well, you know, whatever, sour grapes, I guess. He's a Yankee fan, I'm a Yankee fan. I'm trying not to dwell on them losing, but this thing just started picking up steam. Lo and behold, it reaches the MLB offices, and what do we have? We've got suspensions being handed down, and it's not going to stop just with the Houston Astros. It's going to now flow over to the hated Boston Red Sox if you're a Yankee fan, and it seems like their coach is going to, their manager is going to suffer some consequences as well. So if you're a Yankee fan, this is the best thing in the world that could happen. You got the Houston Astros, who have been a total pain in the neck over the last few seasons, and the Boston Red Sox, both about to be lighter in terms of draft picks and fines and coaches and managers and everything else. We've got an axe swinging there from the MLB offices, and it's going to cut into the Houston Astros and the Boston Red Sox. What better thing could there be? Plus, the Yankees got Garrett Cole. Hopefully, he could turn out to be that guy from there. So that's another thing that people are talking about. Now, let's talk about something in the area of college football recruiting, and that is we are now 22 days. If we're counting this one, that's almost over here on the East Coast. We're now 22 days away from the National Signing Day. It's the one in February. Now the second National Signing Day. And it's starting to lose some steam. I don't know how you guys feel about it. You can certainly comment on it on this video. But the February National Signing Day that we've all come to know and love in years past is starting to lose a little bit of steam, because these top Power 5 and Division I FBS programs have seen it fit to try and sign as much of their allotment and their class in December. Nothing like locking it up as soon as you can and getting a young man committed to you, and that's just what seems to be happening more and more with this now being the third year of the dual signing period. So there's not much left to be done when February rolls around, but what we do have happening is there's still top guys in the country that have not yet made a decision and put pen to paper. So we have a chance now to follow that for the next 3 weeks. Tomorrow we'll make exactly 3 weeks before the National Signing Day. So we will be able to keep an eye on that and see where these guys go. As this relates to Gridiron Studs, I'm very happy with where things are right now. We're moving into 2020 with a full head of steam. We're going to be taking a look at prospects left and right, communicating more with college football coaches as they start to come in more and more, as we now have the app exactly running in the direction that we wanted to. We're able to send out profiles to college football coaches directly from the app, in-app. We've made it more convenient for them. But I don't want to forget about the fans, because you are the ones that really make this thing roll along. I know that there's always a thirst for information in terms of, with fans trying to find out, first of all, what's going on in recruiting for some of these prospects, and also find out where these guys may very well end up. And another part for it too is if you're a hardcore college football recruiting fan, you have a chance to go through some of the many profiles that are out there in the app and discover guys like I do on a daily basis, and some of the guys that work for me do as well. Go through the profiles and check out all of the prospects. And man, every now and then you find yourself a real gem tucked away in the corner of the country. And it's awesome when you're able to do that and find prospects that may not have otherwise been noticed. Yes, I know it's the internet era and it's easier now. It's easier, but it's harder. And let me explain that for you. It's easier to be seen because you could, if you're a college football coach or you're a college football fan, you could just sit down at your desk, or you could be anywhere that you want, and through your mobile device, you can take a look at a prospect. It's harder because you can see everyone now. And obviously, you're not going to be able to see everyone. So first it got easy because you can go find guys in any part of the country. And then it got harder because you can now see everybody. And no one's going to look at 50,000 prospects. No college coach is going to do that. You'd have to be a maniac fan to take a look at 50,000 prospects. Maybe there's a fan out there whose whole life revolves around college football recruiting and their favorite college football team that may go out there and actually look at 50,000 prospects. I can guarantee you that won't be the norm. Taking a look at 5,000 prospects won't be the norm. 500 may not even be the norm. But so that makes it even more difficult for guys to get discovered. So if you're a college football prospect, cover all your bases, and one of those bases is not only having your huddle highlights updated, but also being on something like the Gridiron Studs college football recruiting app, getting all the exposure that you can. And if you are a prospect using it right now, I just want to take this time to tell you, make sure you keep your profile updated, and more importantly, please update the latest recruiting status. And that's basically you telling your fans and college coaches out there exactly what's going on in your recruiting. So every little detail that's going on, who you've received letters from, who you've been in contact with, what you're thinking about, how you're doing in the weight room, what you're doing in your off-season activities, any new milestones, any camp that you may be going to, all those things, anything having to do with your college football recruiting progress. It's basically a diary for you to keep and for fans to be able to watch also. And if you're one of the 5 or 4-star or top rated recruits that's using it, the latest recruiting status is what those fans are coming there for. They want to know what's going on with you. And why not have you tell your story instead of everyone having to try and find out from rivals at 247. Of course, those folks are going to do stories on you, and I'm not saying you don't do those things. Of course, you're going to have those reporters from rivals and 247 do their stories on you. It's great to be featured. However, the information about your recruiting should come directly from you, the recruit, and that's something that I have been striving for, and I think it's a great idea for you guys. It's something that you definitely need to use. Make sure that you control the information that's out there about you. Maybe something is written that's erroneous. It's not entirely true. Give folks an area. Sorry about that. Give folks an area or somewhere that they can go to get the information straight from the horse's mouth, as they say. Well, nevertheless, this is my first live on YouTube. We'll see how this thing goes, see how I like the playback, see some of the feedback. This was rather easy for me to do, so it may be something that I do in the future. We'll bring back the Gridiron Stud Show. We'll see. We'll see if it's coming back. But once again, if you tuned in, thanks for watching this YouTube live of the Gridiron Stud Show test. Let's call it the pilot, Gridiron Stud Show YouTube pilot, and we'll see how it goes, and perhaps there'll be more in the future. Thanks for tuning in.